My name is Miriam Caldwell. I'm 68 years old. Last spring, my daughter submitted a loan application on my house without telling me. She didn't mention it over the phone. She didn't bring it up at Easter dinner 3 weeks before she filed it. A lender in Mesa, Arizona, received paperwork with my name on the signature line and my house listed as collateral. And the first I heard of any of it was a white envelope in my mailbox on a Tuesday in June. My neighbors think I didn't know what was happening. They watched my daughter park in my driveway every weekend with her husband in sorting bins, and they nodded at each other the way people do when they've already decided how a story ends. Poor Miriam. She's not keeping up. Thank goodness her daughter is stepping in. I let them think that for a while. I had my reasons. Welcome back to Brave Mom Stories, where mothers who were counted out get the last quiet word. Drop a comment and stay to the end, because what happened at that loan signing table on July 8th is the whole reason I'm sitting here. The house is at 2217 Oleander Court in Tempe, Arizona. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a covered back patio with a ceiling fan that squeaks on every third rotation because Harold was going to fix it and then Harold couldn't. We paid $147,000 for it in 1991, which felt like an impossible number at the time. The realtor told us we were stretching. She was right. We ate rice and pinto beans and split a streaming account with the couple next door for 2 years, until the ground felt solid beneath us. Harold died in March of 2017. Cardiac arrest, 61 years old, on a Tuesday morning in the driveway. He was pulling his truck keys off the hook by the garage door. The paramedics said it was fast. I have spent 7 years deciding whether that is a comfort or not. In the backyard, along the cinder block wall, Harold planted 4 queen palms, our second spring here. 1992. He dug the holes himself on a Saturday with a post hole digger, which is not the right tool for planting palms. And he knew that. And he used it anyway because we owned it. They're 40 feet tall. Now, they grow in the wrong direction, leaning south toward the light instead of straight up because he planted them too close to the wall. Every monsoon season, I watch them bend in the wind the way Harold never did, and I think about how much of a person stays in a thing they put in the ground wrong. I worked for 31 years as a paralegal at a real estate law firm on Rural Road in Tempe. I started as a file clerk in 1986, the same year my daughter was born, and I worked my way up. What I did, specifically, was prepare and record real property documents, deeds of trust, reconveyances, subordination agreements, power of attorney instruments. I ran chain of title searches at the Maricopa County Recorder's Office before the system went digital, on microfiche, on foot. After it went digital, I did the same work sitting down. For 31 years, I read the documents nobody reads. I was very good at it. Remember that. It matters later, not for the reason you think. My daughter came over on a Saturday in February with a French press and a glossy trifold brochure for a senior community called Sunrise Horizons in Chandler. She set it on my kitchen table with both hands, the way you'd present something you'd been practicing presenting. She's 45. She married her husband in 2005. He owns a landscape design firm, or he did, until the firm ran into the kind of debt that changes the temperature in a room. "Mom," she said, "you know we've been thinking about you." I put the kettle on. She'd brought the good beans, which told me something. She talked about the house being a lot for one person. She talked about Harold being gone 7 years. She talked about the back steps. There are 2. Poured concrete, never once a problem. And she mentioned them the way you'd mention a liability in a disclosure form. She said she wasn't sure I was keeping up the way I used to. I was standing 4 feet from her with a mug in my hand. I asked her one question. Who had she talked to before she talked to me? She looked at the brochure. That was the first answer. The second came a minute later. "There's a man," she said. "Boyd. He specializes in senior transitions. He's already looked at the house." 2 words that sound like a service and mean a removal. I asked what Boyd had done when he looked at the house. She said he'd run some numbers, assessed the equity. Said the market in Tempe was favorable right now. I asked where I would go while the market was favorable. She pointed at the brochure. A silver-haired woman on the cover was laughing at a cup of herbal tea. Studios starting at $4,000 a month. We have no mortgage. We paid it off in 2008. There is equity in this house the way there is water in a well. Real, still, not going anywhere on its own. Someone had done arithmetic on it without asking me. I said, "Do you want more coffee?" She said she had to get going. She left the brochure on the table. I read it cover to cover after she pulled out of the driveway, then put it in the kitchen drawer next to the takeout menus. Then I went out back and stood under Harold's palms for a while because I needed to be somewhere he had been. I need to be fair to my daughter before I go further, because the truth behind her is worse than the simple version. When Harold died in 2017, she drove from Chandler to my driveway in 22 minutes. She stayed for 11 days. She slept on the couch. She handled the funeral home, the death certificates, the insurance calls I couldn't make. She answered the phone when I couldn't lift it. She is not a bad person. She has never been a bad person. But here is what grew in the dark. Her husband's business expanded in 2019. 2 new trucks, 3 new crews, a commercial lease in Mesa for a staging warehouse he borrowed against everything they had. By 2022, the company carried $190,000 in outstanding debt and 2 liens against their personal property. In 2023, my daughter asked me for $50,000. She had a plan. Equipment upgrades, a contract with a property management company, a turnaround by spring. I said no. I told her the truth. I don't lend inside a family. I give or I don't, and I wasn't in a position to give $50,000. She heard a door close. I didn't know then what she'd been calculating on the other side of it. The power of attorney I signed in 2018 was real. I meant it. Harold had been gone a year. I was 62. I had a knee replacement scheduled and some blood pressure readings that had unsettled me, and I wanted my daughter to be able to act if something happened to me. I recorded it at the Maricopa County Recorder's Office because that's what you do when a POA may touch real property. That part is true, and it is my own signature. What my daughter didn't know, what no one in that house in Chandler knew, was what I had recorded 3 years after that. I'll get there. The order matters. In late 2020, her husband took me to lunch at a Mexican place on Scottsdale Road. He ordered 2 margaritas before the chips arrived and then started talking about equity. He said there was money sitting in my house doing nothing. He said they had a real opportunity. He said the return would be there by spring. I said no. I said it once and I said it kindly. 6 weeks later, I received a letter from a lender in Tempe, thanking me for my interest in a home equity line of credit and informing me that my application for $95,000 was being processed. I had not applied for anything. I called the lender. A representative read back my address. Read back a document number. Read back 4 words, attorney in fact 4, and then my name. He had used the 2018 power of attorney. He had signed an application under my name with 4 legal words before it, which is not forgery in the technical sense because a durable POA permits exactly like that within the authority it grants, and only while it remains valid. The application died in underwriting. Not because anyone caught what he'd done, but because my credit file had a flag from an old medical billing dispute that had never been resolved. And the underwriter declined on creditworthiness. He found out and told me the bank was incompetent. He said something about their system being a mess. He never asked what the flag was. He walked past a closed door without wondering what was behind it. I drove to 111 South 3rd Avenue in downtown Phoenix in January of 2021 and paid to record a revocation of that power of attorney. 3 paragraphs. Document number 20021-0087334. Recorded January 14th at 9:02 in the morning. It says the durable power of attorney I executed in 2018. Document number 2088-0441190, naming my daughter as my attorney in fact, is revoked in its entirety. It says any person dealing with the real property described therein is on notice. Then I mailed her a certified copy. Certified mail, Return receipt requested, because that is how a person who spent 3 decades in a law office says something she intends to be able to prove. The green card came back 11 days later. The signature in the delivery box is not my daughter's handwriting. I know her handwriting. This was her husband's, wide, left-leaning capital letters, the R in his surname that loops back too far. He signed for it. She never mentioned it to me, not once in 3 years. My granddaughter came by in April with 2 coffees she'd picked up on her way from clinical hours. She's 22, finishing her last year of nursing at Arizona State. She stood on my porch in her scrubs and didn't come in right away. She was looking at the lockbox on my door. I hadn't told her about the lockbox. She put the coffees down on the porch rail. "Grandma," she said, "what is that doing there?" "I know what it is," she said when I started to answer. She sat down on the top step in her scrubs and told me she'd found out from a social media post. Her mother had shared the property listing with 3 heart emojis and the words "big changes ahead for Grandma." She said she'd called her mother and been told to stay out of it. She said she'd come to any signing. She'd film it if she had to. I said no. I told her what I'd already told myself, what a woman named Maxine, who runs an elder law practice in Phoenix, had told me the week after the Sunrise Horizons brochure appeared on my kitchen table. If you make a scene in the wrong room, you become the story. You become a description of someone's mental state. An argument on the wrong ground leaves evidence of the wrong kind. The room you want is the room where what's written down is the only thing that matters. My granddaughter looked at me the way a 22-year-old almost never looks at anyone, long and without filling the silence. She said, "Okay, but I'm bringing coffee every week until this is over." She did too, every single week. That girl has never once talked about me in the third person, while I was standing right there. Agnes lives 2 houses down. She's been trading tomatoes with me from her garden every August for 27 years. When the listing sign went into my front yard on a Friday, by Saturday morning, she was at my door with zucchini bread and the particular expression people wear when they've heard something about you before you've had a chance to say it yourself. "You just say the word," she told me. "If any of this feels like too much." She didn't finish the sentence. I knew the end of it. 2 days later, a man from around the corner stopped me at the mailbox and asked if I was excited about my next chapter. He said it that way. Next chapter, as though the chapter I was currently in had already been determined to be the last one worth reading. By the end of April, I had become on my own street in the house I paid off 16 years ago, a situation that was being managed, a thing with concerned people around it. I want you to sit with that for a second, not the logistics of what was happening, the pronoun. They were deciding about me. I was the object of the sentence, not the subject. That's the part that actually hurt. On June 10th, a white envelope arrived in my mailbox addressed to Miriam Caldwell, owner, 2217 Oleander Court. It was a loan estimate from a lender in Mesa, home equity line of credit, $95,000, variable rate, application date, May 10th. Borrower, Miriam Caldwell, by Joanne, attorney in fact. They had tried again. Same house, same dollar amount, different lender, and a power of attorney that had been publicly revoked and recorded at the Maricopa County Recorder's Office 3 years and 4 months before. I put the envelope in the kitchen drawer next to the Sunrise Horizons brochure. The following Thursday, I drove downtown, the Maricopa County Recorder's Office on South 3rd Avenue. I've been to that building more times than I can count. You take a number. You sit. You wait for the board. I searched my own name. The index gave me everything. The original grant deed from 1991, the deed of trust, the reconveyance from 2008 when we finished paying, Harold's recorded death certificate from 2017, the 2018 power of attorney, the 2021 revocation, and one entry I had not put there, a collateral verification filing, document number 2024-0331870, recorded May 21st. 2 days after the application date on the loan estimate. The clerk printed certified copies, $11. She stamped them with a seal that raised the paper. I read the revocation standing at the counter, out loud under my breath, because I wanted to hear it in a room that wasn't my own kitchen. Revoked in its entirety. Any person dealing with this property is on notice as of the recording date. That notice had been sitting in a public index for 3 years and 4 months, indexed under my name and my daughter's, available to anyone who typed either one of them. It cost nothing to search. It required no license, no lawyer, no favor from anyone. Nobody had searched. I folded the copies into thirds and put them in my purse and drove home the long way, down Mill Avenue past the hospital where we'd taken Harold, the one time he came home and the one time he didn't. I already knew what I had to do. The drive was just the time I needed to be ready for it. On July 1st, a loan coordinator named Carmen called to confirm the signing appointment for July 8th. She was brisk and pleasant. She said they'd need me there in person with a valid photo ID. In person, I said that would be fine. My daughter called 40 minutes later. She knew they'd called. She said it was just routine paperwork, maybe 45 minutes. She'd handle the parts I didn't need to understand. That evening, I took out the navy blouse I'd worn to Harold's retirement party in 2015 and ironed it. I hadn't ironed it since he died. I set out my good flats. I put my license in the outside pocket of my purse so I wouldn't be searching for it at a table full of people. If you have ever ironed a blouse for a room where someone expected you to be furniture, you know exactly what I was doing at that ironing board. Before we go into that room, do me a favor. Hit subscribe and stay to the end. What happens at that signing table is the whole reason I'm telling any of this. The night before, I called Maxine at home, which she permits exactly twice per client. I told her the appointment was tomorrow. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You understand what they'll do first thing that morning. Any title company running a loan secured by real property does a final title search before funding. They pull the chain of title current right up to that morning to verify nothing has recorded since the application. Bankruptcies, new liens, new instruments of any kind. The revocation has been in that index since January 2021, I said. Nobody's cleared it. Nobody's called me about it. Nobody's asked." She said, "The exception is still open." She asked if I wanted her there. I said no, and I said it for a reason. If my attorney walks in, it becomes a legal maneuver. If I walk in alone with an ID and a purse, it's just a woman sitting at the end of a table while a title examiner does her job. The record doesn't need an advocate. The entire point of a recorded instrument is that it speaks for itself. Maxine said, "Don't explain anything. Don't help them find it. They'll find it." I said I had no intention of helping. I put the 2 certified copies in my purse, still folded in thirds, raised seal still crisp. I left Harold's reading glasses in the dish on the hallway table, where they've been since 2017. I slept about 4 hours. At 6 I got up, made coffee, stood at the kitchen window, and watched the light come up over Harold's leaning palms. I thought, today someone reads the record out loud. July 8th. The signing office was on the 2nd floor of a beige professional building in Tempe, above a physical therapy practice. Round table that seated 6. A pitcher of water with lemon in it. Box of tissues in the center, because they know. I arrived at 9:48. Carmen, the loan coordinator, was there with the file, a notary with a stamp kit. My daughter came in next and looked surprised to see me already seated, which told me she'd expected to arrive before me. Her husband came in after her and put his hand on the back of an empty chair. Not my chair, an adjacent one, and said he was glad everything was working out. 4 minutes after the hour, a woman came in I hadn't seen before. Mid-30s. Reading glasses on a beaded chain, a stack of documents with a yellow flag on the 3rd page. She set the stack on the table and pulled out a chair without sitting in it. She said she was the title examiner. She said her name was Ingrid. She said she needed 5 minutes before anything was signed because her team had run a date-down search that morning, and she wanted to walk the room through the chain of title. My daughter's husband said, "Is there a problem?" There's a history, Ingrid said. Let me start from the beginning. It's faster that way. She read the way an examiner reads, no drama, no inflection, like a grocery list. Grant deed, 1991, Harold G. Caldwell and Miriam A. Caldwell, husband and wife as community property. Deed of trust, 1991, reconveyed 2008, property held free and clear since. Affidavit of death of joint tenant recorded 2017. She turned to the page with the yellow tab. Power of attorney recorded 2018, granting authority to, she said my daughter's name, as attorney in fact for Miriam A. Caldwell. This is the instrument cited in the loan application. My daughter's husband nodded. Right, that's the one we provided. There is a subsequent instrument, Ingrid said. Document number 2021-00-87334. Recorded January 14, 2021, at 9:02 a.m., revocation of power of attorney, revoking the 2018 instrument in its entirety. The recording states that any person dealing with this property is on notice as of that date. Nobody moved. My daughter's husband said, that's not right. Ingrid said, it's public record. It has been public record for 3 years and 4 months. It's indexed under both names in the Maricopa County Recorder database, available to any person who searches either name. There is no fee to search. He said, she must have filed something she didn't understand. She didn't know what she was. I said I knew exactly what I recorded. The room shifted the way rooms shift. Ingrid kept working. That is the thing about people who do a job correctly. The emotional weather doesn't change the checklist. There is a second issue, she said. Setting aside the revocation, which I cannot do, but setting it aside for the purpose of explanation. The 2018 instrument itself contains a self-dealing restriction. The attorney, in fact, is expressly prohibited from using the principal's assets in transactions that directly benefit the attorney, in fact, or her immediate household. A home equity line of credit in which proceeds would service the attorney, in fact's household debts would trigger that clause on its face. My daughter said, we were going to use it for something else. We were going to repay. The room got very quiet in the way that rooms get quiet when someone has said the wrong thing in the right direction. I opened my purse. I took out the Sunrise Horizons brochure, the one from February, the one I had been carrying in that purse for 4 months, and I set it on the table face up so everyone could see the cover. Silver-haired woman, herbal tea, studios from $4,000 a month. My daughter looked at it. Her husband looked at it. I set the certified copy of the revocation next to the brochure. Then I slid the green mail receipt across the table. Certified mail, return receipt requested, postmarked January 2021, addressed to my daughter at her address in Chandler. The signature in the delivery box is wide and left-leaning. It is not her handwriting. Her husband looked at the receipt. He said, I sign for everything. She gets a lot of. He stopped. Ingrid said, without looking up from her documents, that she could not clear the title exception and would not issue an insurance commitment without one. Carmen confirmed from the doorway that the lender had been notified and the loan was withdrawn. 7 faces turned toward me. I have been on the other side of a table in situations like this more times than I can count. 31 years of watching people receive news they weren't ready for. There is always a half second where they try to turn the sentence around and make it come out differently. I stood up once the whole morning. I put my license back in the outside pocket of my purse. I looked at my daughter. I said, you get this house. You have always been getting this house. You get it the day I am finished living in it, and not 1 hour before. Then I thanked Ingrid for doing her job correctly, said, good morning to Carmen, and walked out of that room, down the stairs, past the physical therapy practice, and out into the parking lot. I sat in my car for a few minutes before I trusted myself to get the key in the ignition. In the weeks after, in numbers, because feelings resist auditing. On July 17th, I recorded a declaration of homestead at the Maricopa County Recorder's office. Same counter, same process, $15 in recording fees. My home is now protected against certain forced encumbrances up to the Arizona statutory limit. I filed a complaint with the Arizona Department of Real Estate regarding Boyd, the senior transition specialist my daughter had engaged for facilitating a loan application on an occupied property, without verifying the governing authority or consulting the titled owner. His firm's Senior Transition Services page came down within 3 weeks. Maxine sent a 2-page letter to my daughter and her husband citing Arizona Revised Statutes, Section 46-456, which addresses breach of fiduciary duty and financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. The letter stated that future attempt to encumber, list, or transfer my property without my written, verified consent would be met with a report to Adult Protective Services and referral for criminal review. I changed the locks. I named my granddaughter in a new power of attorney. I did not touch whatever inheritance passes to my daughter when I am gone. Harold signed his documents with his own hand, and they say what he meant them to say. I am not going to rewrite my husband's wishes because his daughter had a hard year. My granddaughter came by the following Tuesday with coffee and sat on the porch steps and did not say, "I told you so," which is part of why she's the one with the new POA. We made rice and pinto beans for dinner, which is what Harold and I ate the first 2 winters in this house, and I hadn't made it since he died, and it tasted exactly the same as it did in 1991. My daughter and I speak when she calls, which has been twice since July. She has not apologized. I stopped waiting for the apology, the same way I eventually stopped waiting for Harold to walk back in through the garage door. Some things you wait for until the waiting itself becomes the thing you have to let go of. People say, I outmaneuvered my family. I want to be precise about this because someone listening right now is doing arithmetic on their own house. There was no cleverness in the romantic sense. There was a public index at 111 South 3rd Avenue in Phoenix. There was an $11 copying fee. There was 31 years of knowing what a recorded instrument means and what it costs to put one on file. Anyone in that family could have searched either of our names on any weekday morning for 3 years and 4 months. They could have done it in 5 minutes from a phone. Nobody looked. One exhausted man heard the number he wanted and stopped reading before the next page. One daughter believed so completely that the plan was already settled that she never thought to check the ground it was standing on. I'll keep the lesson to 1 sentence, because 1 sentence is usually enough for the thing that actually matters. They can decide what you are in every room, except the one where somebody reads the record. Go find out what your record says while you still have the choosing of it. Pull a certified copy of your own deed this week. It costs less than lunch. You don't need a lawyer or a license or a favor from anyone. You need a parking space and your own name. That's my story. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.